That was pretty cool.
Good morning. We call the Cannabis Compliance Board meeting for July 25th, 2023 to order. First order of business is roll call for our quorum.
Durrett.
Present.
Member Durrett.
Here.
Dr. Young.
Here.
Member Guzman Freilich.
Here.
And Justice Douglas.
Here. First order of business is public comment, and prior to the public comment, we have something that needs to be read in the record. Not that. Well, hold on, sir.
So if you'd like to go ahead and read
Sure.
the information on the meeting ID.
To provide public comment via telephone, dial 669-444-9171. Enter meeting ID 829-01-84-4987 and enter passcode 734645.
So Chair, we can go to in-person comments and allow individuals if they want to join on
We'll
the
begin
phone.
with our public comment here in Las Vegas. Please state your name for the record and then be concise as to what you wish to say.
Good morning, Chair. For the record, my name is Timothy Eliado, and I am speaking in regards of the consumption lounges. I just wanted to come in and to make to address the board that I believe that this past 82nd legislative session, there was recently a bill that was passed that does limit the oversight of the CCB in regards to not having a legislative oversight during the whole consumption launch process. And I would like to state some claims and make for the record once again that I did make some claims about the CEIC during previous meetings in which I did receive a threat in the form of an email and also in person. I wanted to state that for the record. And in that thread, it was regards to a lawsuit in which I do stand by every word that I said during any of the meetings. So anyone that feels like there's some sort of defamation that I made, in regards to any comment that I made, please, I am ready for you. I also would like to say that, for the record, the unfair disadvantage in regards to the consumption lounges license via the CEIC Dean of Student, and I'll repeat for the name, Chandler. Chandler was representing the Dean of Students. Chandler did not at any point disclose that he was indeed a prospect license or he was indeed applying, or never disclosed any of that information. Chandler was awarded a license. What we're asking for is we urge the governor's office to thoroughly investigate the consumption launch regulations drafting process and also the licensing drawing process due to conflict of interest and unfair disadvantages. Thanks for your time.
Anyone else in Las Vegas for public comment?
Good morning, esteemed Chair Douglas and board members. For the record, my name is Bri Padilla and I am the Executive Director for the Chamber of Cannabis. As we know, the passing of SB 277, the bill championed by our organization and Senator Dallas Harris, will bring significant and needed changes to our industry. One of those changes will allow certain ex-offenders to petition the state's regulatory body, the CCB, for employment. This new opportunity will enable these individuals with past convictions to have their petition for employment be reviewed and considered for participation in our industry by this board. As we progress with the implementation of this crucial reform, we urge the CCB to provide our industry and community with a clear timeline for its execution. We understand that implementing such changes require careful planning and execution, but we believe that by working together, we can ensure a smooth and efficient process. We additionally request that the CCB provide accessible resources and comprehensive information to the public regarding who can apply through this process and how to navigate it successfully. Transparency and education are paramount during this transitional period, and we want to ensure that every eligible individual is given a fair chance to participate and contribute to our flourishing sector. At the Chamber, we are committed to fostering an inclusive and equitable industry for all. By empowering ex-offenders with the ability to enter the market, we aim to create a more just and compassionate society while bolstering the growth and diversity of our industry. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all those who supported this bill and our organization's advocacy efforts. Together, we are transforming lives and building a stronger, more inclusive industry. Let us continue to collaborate and make the most of this historic moment together. Thank you.
Additional public comment in Las Vegas.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Darlene Mason. I am an executive board member with the Chamber of Cannabis, and I'm here to address some problems that we have been seeing in our industry, especially due to the massive layoffs that have been happening in the cannabis sector due to dispensaries and vendors not properly paying brands or production companies. The source itself is now laid off 38 members. My company has to lay off 4, including myself. And we are asking that the board take a very serious look into the contracts being enforceable as to what is being paid and not being paid. There are too many bad players in our industry that is causing detriment and harm to what is happening and to the economy itself for cannabis. We're asking the board to take a very serious consideration into how these contracts are affecting the bottom line of what cannabis brings into the Nevada economy. Thank you.
Additional comment in Las Vegas. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Council, esteemed Chair Douglas. My name is Timothy Roberts, and as they were mentioning, I fell into that 277, and it's a huge thing for my life. I've been a user for 40 years, and I was arrested and did time in prison. I committed my crime 29 years ago, half my lifetime. I'm 56. I've raised 4 children, and I'm absolutely struggling to make it in this world with this record. I'm a card holding medical cannabis cultivator. Thank you for that. I cultivate at home. I have a autistic son who fell traumatic brain injury, and cannabis literally is saving his life. The stuff that I grow, because I can't purchase the proper balance for my son. I'm dead serious about medical marijuana, and I'm a proponent for organic growth and just doing the whole thing the right way. I'm still on parole. I'm a felon on parole, and I would really, as the Chamber of Cannabis was saying, I'd really like a timeline, because it would be absolutely paramount for my life, because I'm so good at this. I'm just great at cultivating, and I know I could get into a grow house and help right away. I know I can. So if there could be an avenue laid out and a clear way for me to get this done, and how to appeal, to the sensibilities of the board to take a look at our cases in a timely manner, so I can actually start making a living. I'm aged out in the construction field. I'm 56. I can't carry 100 pounds anymore. It's one of the reasons I'm a medical marijuana patient, is my back pain. So anyway, I thank you for your time, and have a good day.
Thank you. Additional public comment in Las Vegas.
Good morning. My name is Christina Ullman, Christina-Ulman. I'm the president and co-founder of the Chamber of Cannabis, a industry leader for 6 years next month, a consumer for 18, and a resident of Las Vegas for 15. I decided to come speak from the heart today. In the 3 years that our association has been formed, we have delivered over 50 public comments. We even have a whole committee on what to present here, what concerns to present, what ideas, and what solutions. And quite frankly, our organization and much of the industry feels like it's falling on deaf ears. I used to have a great leader that said, either you're not listening or you don't care. Which one is it? And we truly do feel like that. We are at a place now where we have 38 people laid off from the Source dispensary.
Those 38 people were my friends. They were my former colleagues. They were talented people with families. Many of them actually came from the traditional market, and the probability of them going back to the unlicensed traditional market is pretty high. Or the probability of them going to another state and getting involved is pretty high. So now we have a situation where people's safety is in jeopardy. And we've said this before in public comment. There's nothing more jeopardizing to someone's safety than not having a job, not having health insurance. And those people are now in that predicament. And this agenda, I see that you're going to be talking about the receivership of the source, but you're not going to be talking about the people that lost their jobs. So that's what we want to make sure that you're aware of today. And just as my colleague Darlene said, people aren't paying each other. That's theft. Like, while you guys are worried about metric tags and how high the sink is, other people are worried about the hundreds of $1,000s that they're owed. And those people are usually the farmers, the cultivators, the producers, the people with the least amount of capital. So those two concerns we want to make sure that you're discussing. We would love to do another public workshop. In our last public workshop, we thought it was very successful in what you said and how you wanted to work with the industry, but we haven't seen that. I can't even tell you if that was this year or last year. So we're urging you to call for another workshop, call on people that are experts in cultivation, production, compliance, retail, and ask, how can we make this industry better before we end up like California? Because once we get to that place, there is no going back. Thank you.
Additional public comment, Las Vegas.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Danny Baranowski, DaniBaranowski. I am Vice President and co-founder of the Chamber of Cannabis. I am a small business owner and Las Vegas resident. I am here to reiterate what my esteemed colleagues and leaders of the Chamber of Cannabis and also this gentleman have said, that this industry, while it is thriving in some capacity, there is a lot of opportunity to be better. One of the guiding principles of the CCB is to maintain this industry's economic benefit by generating the appropriate taxes and fees. And I do believe that it is incumbent upon all of us that are building this industry to create that economic growth and do good business with each other. So to move this industry forward, I would like to suggest to the board that we revisit suggestions that have been made in the 50 public comments that our organization has made. And again, call for another workshop so that we can discuss this accounts receivable. I represent multiple brands, and one of the most challenging parts of us continuing to grow and innovate for brands and for this industry is that we have so much back debt, so much back pay. And maybe it's people not paying, and then it's also licensees not sure how to get that money back. So again, calling for the opportunity for us to participate and from the leaders, from the experts, let you know how the best way to make these goals happen. I'd like to close with the CCB's words here. You know, our strength lies in our commitment to be the very best. What we expect from our licensees is what we expect from ourselves. So looking forward to doing that with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment, Las Vegas. Do we have then public comment in Carson City or in our northern Nevada area?
Hello. Oh, that's great. Will Adler, for the record, Sierra Cannabis Coalition. I would like to echo some of the comments down heard in Southern Nevada, but just encourage the board to schedule some regulatory workshops and some hearings based upon the legislation that has passed this year. Senate Bill 277, Senate Bill 328, and 195 all passed that do need regulatory updates. But in that same time, I encourage CCB to look at all the regulations we have before us, including those around lab testing and the parameters in that space, because those are the oldest ones we have on our books and do need a good fresh look and an update. So I encourage those to be brought up today and to schedule some workshops. Thank you.
Additional public comments in northern Nevada, please. Hearing none. Do we have any public comment through other source?
For those online wishing to give public comment, please hit the raise hand icon on Zoom or dial *9 to raise your hand if you're calling in. Okay. Caller with the last four numbers 2608, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, CCB. This is Catrice Saunders for the record. I am Vice President with Pardon Me Please. I've been a medical cannabis patient advocate and activist in Las Vegas. I've been affected by the drug war at a state level and a federal level. This last past legislative session, even though SB 277 was passed to address some of the things that I was dealing with, I still dealt with opposition in regards to sitting down with local legislative members in regards to some of the things that I've dealt with the CCB, with CEIC. When I first moved back, the first meeting that they had, they pulled guns on me, trying to intimidate me. That needs to be for the record. That's why I don't work with CEIC Nevada, because they do not try to include me. They try to exclude me and intimidate me with guns at the first meeting when I got back. That's why I started my own nonprofit, because of the corruption that's going on within this whole thing. Everyone's corrupt, from the CCB to the legislators making rules and regulations to further harm people who have been affected by the war on drugs. Also, there are people using Eagle 40 and having to have their plants remediated to get it to market, which is not good for medical cannabis patients and the consumer. There needs to be more oversight for people's growing practices so that there doesn't need to be tainted meds on the street. Also, when they were writing the regulations for the lounges, I had 3 people that wanted to invest in me, and I got wrote out of the legislation again by 0.5%. I was not in the impacted zone. I was set up by the DEA after meeting President Obama and asking about medical cannabis patients' rights under Operation Chronic Problem. I helped protect over 800 patients when I went to prison. When I got out of prison, I helped build an industry. I helped grand open the Source Nevada, the dispensary in Nevada. I worked at Silver Sage. I had to work at 2 dispensaries from the height of us going from medical to retail cannabis because I was not getting paid enough. They had me quit the job over at Silver Sage and told me that they were going to pay me. They did not, and they ended up firing me, and then they changed the law to exclude me. For the past 3.5 years, I've been speaking out in regards to social justice and how corrupt the CCB is and the state of Nevada, perpetually writing rules and regulations to further harm me and those most affected by the war on drugs. The legislation that you guys put up is to further help yourselves and to make it look like you guys are doing real social justice. In reality, SB 277 would not have to be written if you guys hadn't changed the law in the first place to exclude me 3 years ago when we went from medical to retail. So this is blatant disrespect and another slap in the face for me sacrificing my time and energy, helping build an industry with education, having my intellectual property stolen. You guys need to all be investigated by the FBI and put up and be indicted for corruption, money laundering, and everything else going on, because it's horrible. I did not sacrifice for patients to have safe access for medicine for you guys to mess up the industry, to poison people, having plants need to be remediated, and all sorts of other things. It's not the golden standard. It's disgusting, and it makes me sick that I didn't snitch on people and I lost my family in the process, protecting people to make the industry look like a joke around the nation. There is so much corruption going on. I swear to God, it is my mission and on my grandmother's grave to bring those who are responsible for the corruption and for the further next drug war 2.0 for people who have been affected by the war on drugs like me is irreversible, and you guys will pay. I will get my justice one way or another.
Thank you.
And that is it for the record, but because there's probably so much other things that I have to say, but those are some of the things that needed to be stated today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Additional comment on the phone lines?
There is no other
Shaking.
additional public comment.
Thank you. That would close in our public comments. we go to our meeting minutes for approval from June 20th, 2023. If board members have had a chance to review those minutes, if we can have a motion for approval. Correction.
Jerry Mary, for the record, I move to approve the minutes for June 20th, 2023.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
This member Young, I'll second that.
We have a motion for approval and a second. Do we have any additional discussion or request for corrections or changes? Hearing none, all in favor of the approval of the minutes for June 20th, 2023, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays?
Aye.
Any abstention? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Takes us to item number 3, consent agenda. The sole item, consideration for approval to extend 12-month period for a final inspection as to FNM Holding LLC C105 RC105 for possible action. Our staff report, and can we have the applicants?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, board members. Steve Gilbert for the record, Chief of Administration. Item number 3 consists of a petition submitted by conditional licensee to extend the 12-month period for final inspection by the CCB. The request differs from previous requests heard by the board in that these licenses were active and operating at one point, but then were reverted to conditional status. FNM Holdings obtained the medical and adult use cultivation license in the city of Reno from transfer of interest number 22005, approved by the board at its July 2022 board meeting. The previous owner of the licenses were Herbal Care LLC. On June 27th, 2023, FNM, through its legal counsel, submitted a request to extend the 12-month deadline to become operational. FNM reports it has worked diligently to prepare the facility for reopening, including making renovations and repairs. It reports that the scarcity of building materials and other supplies has delayed the progress, as well as delayed its work with local jurisdictions and professionals. It requests an extension of the August 3rd, 2023 deadline for an additional 6 months to February 3rd of 2024. And I just want to note that this is different than the previous extension requests that have come in front of the board, and that this license was operational and active prior to being reverted to conditional. So the February 3rd, 2024 request may be appropriate if the board sees fit. Thank you.
We have the licensee.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Amanda Connor on behalf of FNM Holdings LLC. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert, for the summary. My client has been diligently working to get this facility ready for reopening. I know we submitted several pictures of the facility, which I believe the board has had the opportunity to review. I think those pictures speak for themselves, and that it shows that they have taken significant steps to preparing it for reopening. They have faced some challenges with supply issues, and in fact, they recently got the grow tables delivered and they were the wrong tables, and the manufacturer apologized and is working to get them sent the correct tables. So things like that have happened, which have caused this delay. We kindly request an extension of 6 months to get the facility operational. Thank you.
Ms. Connor, with your licensee, the photographs indicate product being distributed, and I say product, materials for building. And I presume they're able to move ahead, and they're still contemplating being able to have this facility up and open by February. So the 6-month request is still what they're asking for?
Yes, Chairman. Amanda Connor for the record. Yes, 6 months is the request. My client anticipates hopefully being operational much sooner than that. I'm sure you can understand they, acquired this license. They want to get operational to begin the process of growing and selling product. So hopefully it will be sooner than the 6 months, but 6 months is what we're requesting.
Any additional questions that any board member has of council? If there's no additional question, can we get a motion?
Jerry Mary, for the record, I move to approve the consent agenda, item number 3A, consideration for approval to extend the 12-month period for final inspection for FNM Holding LLC, C105, RC 105.
From the chair, just a question. It's listed as 12-month. They were asking for 6 to the February. Is that where we want to go? The February date, or would you like the 12?
I believe they only are requesting 6. They were originally given 12 months to become operational, so we're asking for an additional 6.
Ms. Merritt, if I can, if it's all right with you, if you could amend to the February date of 2024.
I'd like to amend my motion to extend the date to February 2024.
Thank you. With that, we now have a motion for approval for the extension to February 2024. Do we have a second? Motion. We have a second for extension to February of 2024. Any additional discussion need to be had? Hearing none. All in favor for the extension to February of 2024, please say aye.
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 Member Freilich?
Yes, Chairman.
Matter carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you to Steve Gilbert and Marilyn Gray for their work on this request.
Takes us to item number 4, consideration for the proposed settlement agreements to resolve disciplinary action. The first matter is the Cannabis Compliance Board versus the Harvest Foundation LLC, case number 2021-55 for possible action.
Chairman, this is Member Drett. I have a disclosure on this one.
Please.
I've disclosed previously when this matter has come before the board, I was retained as an expert witness by one of the parties in the litigation with the Harvest Foundation. I was retained by a firm to provide expert witness services. This was prior to my service on the board, so I'm abstaining from any matters relating to this licensee to avoid an appearance of impropriety out of an abundance of caution. Thank you.
Thank you for that disclosure. With that, if we could have overview from our staff, please.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. L. Christopher Rath, Senior Deputy Attorney General. Before we start on this one, I have a few brief opening comments because I'll be covering all 3 of the settlement agreements. I just would want to note for the record that all of the 3 agreements up for approval today involve cases which arose prior to the new legislation, which came into effect on June 14th. That legislation was not retroactive, so you are not required to consider all the new requirements like the mandated mitigating factors, although you may do so. And in fact, we have specified mitigating factors in each of this settlement agreements regardless. As these are older cases, they are not subject to the $20,000 cap per violation either. However, you will note, or the board will note, that each of these settlement agreements still resulted in civil penalty amounts that work out to less than 20,000 violations admitted, even though respondents did not admit to all the allegations in the complaint. Also, it should be noted that these are arm's length settlement agreements. The parties negotiated the penalties, admissions, and other terms, so the parties can still agree on whatever the amount they concur is appropriate under the circumstances. Of course, it's still up to the board to accept, reject, modify those agreements and their terms. There will be a few more cases under the old regime as we move forward over the next few months. Once we have completely moved on to the new regime, we may be presenting these agreements in a slightly different format. Would welcome any input from the board regarding that in the near future. And we also will be updating Regulation 4 to comply with the new regulations. However, as you can see from the settlement agreements we have today, we are really already transitioning to the system. So with that, I will turn now to the Harvest Foundation matter. This case has a rather lengthy and complicated history, as it originated with both a complaint and a summary suspension in November 2021, and eventually a cannabis receivership in July 2022. The Harvest Foundation is a medical and adult use cannabis cultivation facility, and it was located in Las Vegas. The complaint arose out of an investigation which started in August 2021. However, prior to that, Harvest had allowed its licenses to expire on June 30th, 2021. After ignoring some warnings on this issue and continuing to operate for a while, the CCB agents went to the facility and conducted several inspections starting on August 5, 2021. As detailed in the complaint, CCB agents found metric inventory discrepancies, multiple cannabis plants and products that had been left in the facility unattended for some time and that were not tracked in metric, untagged cannabis, lack of video surveillance footage. Harvest renewed its license on the 90th day after expiration by a few minutes, avoiding mandatory surrender provisions of the NCCR. The investigations and inspections continued after that. Additional site inspections were conducted in November 2021. CCB agents found a facility was unlocked in certain places. It still held cannabis. There was an underage contractor employee in the facility. There was no working security system, no required visitor logs, and additionally, some additional metric and inventory variances. This was blamed on several thefts, which were not timely reported to the CCB. Based on the foregoing, the complaint alleged 4 Category 1 violations, 4 Category 2 violations, 4 Category 3 violations, as well as Category 4 and Category 5 violations. The complaint requested revocation of the licenses and a civil penalty of over $400,000. In addition, the same day the complaint was filed, the board issued a summary suspension order due to the issues found in November and the need to secure the facility. CCB agents found additional violations even after the complaint was filed, including multiple failures to file required reports with the board. Respondent answered the complaint on December 21, 2021. The disciplinary process commenced, although the parties soon entered into negotiations to attempt to resolve the case, resulting in several continuances in the disciplinary process. In July 25, 2022, the court ordered a receiver to be placed over Harvest based on a motion filed by one of Harvest's creditors. Mr. Singer was then appointed receiver and approved by this board, and the settlement negotiations continued with Mr. Singer. The negotiations eventually resulted in resolution contingent on the board's approval. Given the severity of the issues, the settlement agreement is somewhat complex. However, the board has approved similar terms in other settlement agreements in the past. The board should also note that the settlement agreement was fully approved by the receivership court on June 12, 2023, and that court order is also attached to the settlement agreement. As set forth in the proposed settlement agreement, to resolve the matters at issue, respondent admitted to a total of 11 violations as follows: 1 Category 1 violation for operating without all the required permits and licenses; 1 Category 2 violation for failing to maintain a required security alarm and surveillance system; 3 Category 3 violations for failing to tag cannabis plants and products; and 6 Category 5 violations for failing to file required reports with the board. In addition to these admissions, the settlement agreement also contains the following provisions. Within 180 days of the board's approval of the settlement agreement, Harvest will submit a transfer of interest request for the licenses for the court and board approval. The transfer of interest request will need to be submitted with a change of location request, as Harvest has been removed from its original facility location. There will be payment of a civil penalty in the amount of $200,000, which is to be paid within 30 days of the approval of the TOI, but it may be extended for good cause on request. All owners of record of Harvest have agreed to surrender their agent cards within 12 months of approval of the TOI and have agreed not to apply for any new agent cards in the state of Nevada for 8 years. 2 owners of Harvest also hold ownership interest in another cannabis establishment, Strive. Those 2 owners have agreed to relinquish that ownership interest as well and must submit a TOI request for those ownership interests within 180 days of the board's approval of this stipulation. Harvest will revert to conditional license status until the TOI is approved and remain so until it passes final inspection. Strive is in conditional status and will remain so until its TOI has been approved and it passes final inspection. One owner of Strive, Ms. Willitson, remains in Strive and she's not been disciplined in any way through this stipulation. All Harvest and Strive licenses must be properly and timely renewed in the interim and maintain their licenses. The CCB staff and Attorney General have taken into account mitigating factors in coming to this agreed upon resolution. Given the severe nature and number of the violations here, the primary mitigating factors are the licensee owner's agreement to sell the licenses and give up their interest in the cannabis industry in Nevada. Without this concession, the only option would have been to proceed with the disciplinary action to revoke the licenses and eventually the agent cards too. In addition, the receiver, as a mitigating factor, has cooperated and been integral to the resolution of this rather complicated case. Respondents provided a plan of correction, which is detailed in paragraph 26 of the settlement agreement. The CCB staff approved that plan of correction prior to the receivership. However, essentially, the core plan of correction is the sale of the licenses and the surrender of the owner's agent cards. However, you can review paragraph 26 for more details on that plan of correction. Based on the foregoing, the Attorney General recommends and requests the CCB approve the settlement agreement. I'm available for any questions, as are the receiver, his counsel, and the other parties are also present for any questions. I'll turn it back to you, Chair, with that.
Thank you. At this point, if we can hear from our respective parties in terms of who's present today representing this. We also thank ahead of time counsel and the receiver for the hard work they've done thus far to try to get this back on the right track.
Good morning, Chair Douglas, members of the board, John Savage, on behalf of the court-appointed receiver, Kevin Singer. Mr. Singer is also present.
Yeah. Good morning, board.
And I'm Maggie McCletchie. I was just retained to represent Mr. Lemons and Mr. Burton in their individual capacity. Thank you.
Good morning. Appearing via Zoom is Derek Connor on behalf of the Harvest Foundation. I was counsel of record in the disciplinary matter.
Mr. Connor, anything to get away from wearing a tie this morning?
You know, I'm in Idaho where cannabis is illegal. It's the only place I could come to get a real vacation.
Having said that, representations from the affected parties, if any.
Chair Douglas, members of the board, John Savage, on behalf of the singer, on behalf of the receiver, Kevin Singer. We're happy to answer any questions. Just to give the board a brief update on the status of the receivership. As Attorney Chris Rath mentioned, the receivership court did approve this settlement agreement, and the receiver has been marketing the license for some time. We've already reduced the minimum bid amount once with court approval. We still do not have any offers on the license, but we are hopeful that we can still meet the deadlines in the settlement agreement, and we are going to use our best efforts to do so.
Thank you.
For the record, Maggie McCletchie. I just want to make one issue clear, and that's that, as Mr. Rath detailed, Mr. Lemons and Mr. Burton do hold interest in another cannabis establishment that I believe has a TOI pending. I believe that them transferring those interests is consistent with the settlement agreement. But just for the avoidance of confusion, I just want to make clear on the record that the settlement agreement will not impede their ability to proceed with the other transfer, and the provisions regarding payment of the fines will not impede them from renewing any agent cards while that other transfer is pending. I just want to make sure that we're able to effectuate what I think is the aim of the settlement agreement, and that's that Mr. Burton and Mr. Lemons divest themselves of interest in all the cannabis establishments in Nevada.
That's correct. I believe the settlement agreement provides for that. I think it says 12 months afterwards, they've got to surrender the cards.
There's
They had some extra time for that.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. There's some ambiguity as to the language about renewal of agent cards, and I just want to make clear that they can renew their agent cards if they become due while their renewals become due while the other TOI is pending without having to pay this fine.
I mean, I don't see an issue with that because the license is not operational at this
Correct.
point. It's conditional.
Correct. Understood.
Thank you for those clarifications.
Thank you.
And Kevin Singer, the court receiver. I just want to add, I mean, we're trying to do here what we've done in other receivership cases, which is try to monetize the license to pay the fees and penalties and pay back any creditors of the business.
Thank you. Questions by board members? Hearing no questions at this time from any board member, if we can have a motion for acceptance of the proposed settlement in this disciplinary matter.
Jerry Merritt for the record. I move to approve consent agenda number 4, consideration of the proposed settlement agreement to resolve a disciplinary action, letter number A, Cannabis Compliance Board versus the Harvest Foundation LLC, case number 2021-55.
Just note, it's not a consent agenda item, but it is for consideration, so that motion is intact. Having said that, do we have a second?
This is Member Young. I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. Unless we have any discussion or corrections. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And we have one abstention. Is that correct, Member Durrett?
Yes, thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, and we appreciate it and the ongoing work that has to be done.
Thank you.
That takes us to item number B, Cannabis Compliance Board versus Diversified Modalities Marketing LTD, case number 2023-019 for possible action.
Thank you, Chair. This one will be simpler. This licensee, Diversified Modalities, is a medical and adult use cannabis cultivation facility. There was no complaint filed in this matter. Rather, after the investigation concluded, Respondents Counsel and I discussed whether the matters at issue could be resolved via settlement agreement. The parties were able to accomplish that. Respondent waived the filing and service of a complaint. This matter arises from a routine inspection and investigation which commenced in October 2021. The CCB staff subsequently issued a statement of deficiencies letter noting that they had found multiple violations, including failure to properly tag cannabis, multiple failures to follow seed-to-sale tracking requirements, improper disposal of cannabis waste with sufficient destruction logs, and failure to have a licensed pesticide applicator, as well as some building disrepair issues. Over the next few months, the CCB staff and respondent went back and forth with correction plans and proposed corrective measures, with CCB approving a final plan of correction in October 2022. Once the investigation closed, as noted, parties through their counsel engaged in settlement negotiations to come to a mutually agreeable resolution of the case subject to the CCB's approval. Respondent waived the filing and service of complaint. As set forth in the proposed settlement agreement, to resolve these matters, respondent admitted to one Category 3 violation for failing to tag cannabis as required, a second Category 3 violation for failing to follow seed-to-sale tracking requirements, one Category 4 violation for failing to properly respond to a board agent's request to provide information or documentation timely, a second Category 4 violation for failing to properly stock hand washing facilities. Respondent also agreed to pay a civil penalty in the total amount of $30,000 with the option to make a lump sum payment or to pay over time in 12 monthly installments. CCB staff and counsel fully considered the mitigating factors in coming to this resolution. Those are outlined in paragraph 12 of the settlement agreement. The mitigating factors include the fact respondent cooperated in providing CCB staff with the documents and follow-up to its plans of correction. Respondent retained regulatory counsel to assist with ongoing information and document requests. Respondent and its counsel worked with the CCB staff to formulate a new plan of correction after the CCB did not approve the original one. The respondent voluntarily destroyed cannabis that was not properly recorded in the seed to sale tracking system, and respondent and its counsel cooperated with CCB staff and counsel in coming to a settlement agreement without the need to file and serve a disciplinary complaint, which saved the state of Nevada time and costs. In addition, with respect to the ability to pay factor, respondents represented that it may temporarily close in the near future to obtain some new employees and or managers and would be doing little business in the meantime. Therefore, the civil penalties payment plan that we agreed to would be stretched over 10 months, which should mitigate any impact on the business. Respondent also provided a plan of correction, which is detailed in paragraph 21 of the settlement agreement. CCB staff has approved that plan. The plan includes some of which is already done, retention of regulatory counsel, voluntary destruction of cannabis, both of which were done, updates to standard operating procedures to bring them into compliance, updating and revising destruction logs to comply with regulations, obtaining a certified pesticide applicator, and fixing the building disrepair issues. Based on the foregoing, the Attorney General recommends and requests the CCB approve this settlement agreement. I'm available for any questions, as is counsel for respondent, who is also the point of contact, Mr. Hardy.
Before we entertain any questions from our staff as to the settlement agreement, representations on behalf of the licensee, Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. Brian Hardy with the law firm of Marquis Arbach. I have with me Dr. Vu Liu, who is the owner of Diversified Modalities. We appreciate the diligence of your staff and being able to work together to work through this matter. And we have reviewed and approved the settlement agreement as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions by members of the board of either our staff or the licensee? It's a settlement agreement.
Member Durrett, I have a question. Can Mr. F, can you remind me how much product was untagged and not in metric? It didn't seem like it was much.
It was, I think there were 12 missing tags.
That may be accurate. I don't have that number off the top of my head. And there were some inventory discrepancies as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the direction we're headed with I think that the AG's office, I think staff is all really hearing some of the things I've said and maybe other board members about, lowering fines and different focuses. But this one seems like an outlier where it does seem like the infraction seems relatively minor, especially when you look at the case we just heard, which is shocking. And then you have this one where it seems like any facility could have a number of problems. I don't think any facility should have product not in metric, but it seems like they could all have a couple of small things you could find during an inspection.
Well, there were other issues, Member Durrett, which, if he had filed a complaint, there would have been more charges. There was difficulty in getting into the facility at one point. That could have been an issue. There wasn't a certified pesticide applicator for quite a long period of time. So, we could have charged a lot more, but in the interest of resolving the case and realizing it wasn't the worst case in the world like the last one you saw, we didn't go after those things and were able to come to a resolution where we agreed on all the specific penalties and violations.
And I can respond to that as well, if you'd like, Commissioner Durrett, in the fact that at the end of the day, there were, so it was 12 cannabis plants, 18 jars of cannabis product, and 4 metric tags that were missing in this particular issue, plus some sync issues. And I'll apologize. Is that better if I get down and slow down a little bit? Oh, the phone was going off. All right. So there were 12 cannabis plants, 18 jars of product, and 4 metric tags that were not associated as set forth in paragraph 2 of the complaint or of the settlement agreement. That identifies those as specificity. And when being able to negotiate these matters, obviously, one of the issues we have is that my client is a physician, and there has been a significant need during this time, during that particular time, for physicians. So he was spending more time in hospitals than he was able to spend at the facility, which resulted in some of these issues, which is why we've decided to go ahead, as he's indicated, as a mitigating factor to identify and get more staff and/or additional assistance to be able to help him out at the facility. Those are all the mitigating circumstances that we've decided and agreed upon, given the nature of this. But at the end of the day, the fees versus the attorney fees that would be associated with it have been able to be resolved in this nature. Thank you.
I have one more question, Member Durrett, again. What is the requirement for a certified pesticide applicator? I've been all over these regs 100 times, and for some reason, that one doesn't ring a bell. What is the requirement there?
Well, Ms. Cronkite might be able to give you more details on that, but basically you have to have somebody who's certified and trained to apply the pesticides so they're done properly. I mean, that's the long and short of it. And I think that's been a requirement for even when we were under tax.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I don't know why that one's just not sticking out to me when I've gone through these regs a million times and done the SOPs, and I just don't remember that one. But thank you.
And it's not something that they admitted as a violation anyway for the settlement agreement.
Other board members with questions or clarification?
Mr. Chairman, Member Guzman Freilich, I just want to commend staff and legal counsel on being proactive with this and saving the state time and money. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, if we can have a motion for approval of the settlement agreement.
Jerry Merritt for the record. I move to approve consent agenda number 4, item B, CCB versus Diversified Moralities Marketing, LTD, case number 2023-019.
We have a motion for approval. We have a second. Any additional discussion or comments? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Member Freilich, I'll second that.
Oh, I'm sorry. We now have a second. Moving ahead too quickly. We have a motion. We have a second. Any additional discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays?
Chairman, I'm a nay. May I make a comment with that? It's Member Durrett.
Go ahead.
I think this is a lot closer to where with the board and the agency and the staff and the industry getting on the same page with where fines should be. It's just, to me, it's just a little too high, especially when I compare it to the other ones. So I'm a no, but I think we're all getting very close to coming up with standards that are reasonable for the industry. This one is just a little too high for me. So I'm a no.
No, any abstentions? Matter carries. Mr. Hardy, thank you. And Doctor, good luck and thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board.
Moves us to item number C, Cannabis Compliance Board versus NC Can Labs LLC, case number 2023-02 for possible action.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Christopher Rath, Senior Deputy Attorney General. This licensee, NV Can Labs, is a medical and adult use cannabis independent testing facility or a cannabis lab. The allegations in this complaint arise from a routine inspection and investigation which commenced in November 2021. There was further follow-up after this, and the CCP staff and respondent went back and forth a bit with plans of correction. The CCP staff eventually approved a final plan of correction on October 21, 2022. The complaint in this case was filed on April 24, 2023. There were multiple allegations, but the key allegations contained in the complaint against the respondent include the following. One, that respondent made an intentionally false statement to board agents. 2, respondent failed to comply with approved procedures in the laboratory, including its own standard operating procedures. 3, respondent failed to comply with NCCR 11.070 in several different ways, including failing to report test results to the CCB and conducting some unauthorized retesting of cannabis samples. 4, respondent failed to notify the CCB of modifications or expansion of its facilities. 5, respondent failed to follow an approved security plan. 6, respondent failed to maintain a quality assurance, quality control program in its laboratory. And 7, respondent failed to have an owner in possession of a valid cannabis establishment agent card for over a year. Respondent requested an extension to file an answer in order to engage in settlement negotiations. This was granted along with a second extension to complete settlement negotiations and allow additional time to draft and finalize the settlement agreement for you today. Both parties were able to come to a mutually agreeable resolution of the case subject to board approval without the need for respondent to file its answer. Again, saving the state some time here. As set forth in the proposed settlement agreement to resolve these matters, respondent admitted to the following 9 violations. 1 category 2 violation for failing to comply with NCCR 11.070, which pertains to laboratory testing requirements. A 2nd category 2 violation for intentional variance from approved procedures in a laboratory. A category 3 violation for allowing activity which violates the laws of the state. A 2nd category 3 violation for failing to maintain a quality assurance, quality control program in a lab. A category 4 violation for an owner failing to have a valid cannabis establishment agent card. And 4 category 5 violations for failing to comply with requirements not described in any other categories. And of course, we shifted around some of those violations from what was alleged in the complaint in order to get a mutually agreeable resolution. Respondent also agreed to pay civil penalties in the total amount of $162,500, either within 30 days of approval or pursuant to a payment plan, which would be stretched over 10 months. The CCB staff and council fully considered mitigating factors in coming to this resolution. Those are outlined in paragraph 9 of the settlement agreement. They include the fact that respondent cooperated with CCB staff in coming to and implementing an appropriate plan of correction to prevent the violations at issue from occurring in the future. That took a little time, but together they worked it out and got it done. Respondent and counsel cooperated with CCB counsel once the complaint was filed, and we were able to come to a resolution before an answer was filed and the case went into the disciplinary process. We also took into account the licensee's ability to pay the fine. Given the seriousness of the violations, the civil penalty was considerable, but taking this matter to a hearing could have resulted in revocation or suspension, as well as a much higher civil penalty. Regardless, respondents have been provided with a 10-month payment plan to comply, which will ease any financial burden. Respondent also provided a plan of correction, which is detailed in paragraph 19 of the settlement agreement, and the CCB staff has approved the plan. In brief summary, the plan includes the following. Respondent did update its quality assurance, quality control program manual, standard operating procedures, or SOPs, and job descriptions related to quality assurance and quality control duties to bring them into compliance with regulations. Respondent updated its SOPs to ensure proper sanitary procedures for handling cannabis samples. The SOPs are also updated to reflect practice and to ensure they complied with regulations. Respondent ceased the practice of discussing homogeneity targets for infused drinks with its one customer where there was potential pollution, and is now testing samples for the item's approved homogeneity targets rather than targets that are made up. Respondent has ceased unapproved retesting of residual solvents and concentrate samples and has updated its SOPs to comply with regulations. Respondent has updated its security system to provide audio and visual notifications of any failures. Respondent has implemented new policies to ensure facility modifications are submitted and approved prior to any modifications taking place. And respondent has checked all agent cards, instituted a log to track expiration dates on agent cards, and now requires all employees and owners to renew their agent cards 1 month prior to expiration. Based on the foregoing, the Attorney General recommends and requests the CCB approve this settlement agreement. I'm available for any questions, as is Mr. Hunt, representing the licensee, and a representative of the licensee is also present here today.
Thank you. If we can have representations from Mr. Hunt and licensee for the record. I do note that Mr. Hunt, Council 4, has his bow tie on this morning. And unfortunately for him, his hair is starting to look like mine. With that, Mr. Hunt.
Because we go a long way. Well, good morning, members of the board. Justice Douglas, that's an old habit. I won't quit with me. John Hunt of the law firm of Clark Hill, Nevada Bar number 1888. Present with me is Nick Sever, who is a member as well as a co-manager. Just for the record, working with Mr. Rath, I think the resolution protects the industry. My clients have taken responsibility, and I think that everything's a learning experience, right? And one of the things about being in this new industry is that how we interpret things or maybe misinterpret things. But as you come into a resolution, things become clear. And I think that's what it is. My clients are an exemplary lab. As a matter of fact, the board relies on them for retesting, as well as a lot of the people in the industry. So on behalf of Mr. Sever and Nevada Can Labs, thank you for the consideration and hope the board would approve this stipulation.
We note that we have the approval between the parties. We also have the plan of correction, which is paragraph 19. We appreciate that. Board members, you have questions or areas that you wish to comment about on the record prior to going to a vote? If we have no one with any questions, then if we can have a motion for approval.
Jerry Merrick, for the record, I move to approve consent agenda item number 4C, CCB versus NV Can Lab LLC, case number 2023-02.
We now have a motion for approval of the settlement agreement. Do we have a second as to that settlement agreement?
This is Member Young. I'll second that.
We have a motion. We have a second for approval. Any additional comments or corrections? If there are none, if we can have a vote, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Matter carries unanimously. Thank you very much and good luck, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the board. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Item number 5, consideration of approval of court-appointed receiver application for cannabis establishment agent registration card for cannabis receiver. Item A, Jacques Sanucci application for cannabis establishment agent representative card for cannabis receiver as court-appointed receiver for Nevada Organic Remedies LLC D152, RD152, RD221, as well as RD219, C094, RC094, P063, RP063, T056, RD216, Consumption Lounge application ACON-A22-00070, RD218, RD217, Henderson Organic Remedies LLC D107 and RD107, and Wellness Orchids of Nevada LLC C062, RC062 in 8th Judicial District Court, case number A23-870859-C for possible action.
Good morning, Chair. Christopher Rath. Once again, I'm going to provide you with a quick and brief introduction before the parties speak. This concerns the application for a cannabis receiver agent card for Jacques Santucci to be placed as a receiver over the licenses of 3 cannabis establishments. You've listed out all of the license numbers, and the establishments are Nevada Organic Remedies, Henderson Organic Remedies, and Wellness Orchards of Nevada. In total, this receivership would cover 16 medical and adult use cannabis licenses, as well as a pending consumption lounge application. According to the district court filings, the entities employ a total of over 300 people. In brief, this receivership has been requested due to ongoing management issues with parent company, The Source Holdings LLC, as well as a large debt owed to one of the minority owners of The Source, which is Green Ops. Counsel for Green Ops is here to answer any questions or provide any additional detail you may need on those issues. Green Ops filed a complaint and motion to appoint a receiver in the 8th Judicial District Court. There was no answer to the complaint, no opposition filed to the motion. The court heard the motion to appoint receiver on July 7, 2023. I was also present at that hearing, and the court granted the motion subject to CCB's approval of Mr. Santucci's application for a cannabis receiver agent card. All interested parties, including the point of contact for all the licenses, have been noticed of this board agenda item. Mr. Santucci's application has been provided in the board materials, and you've also been provided with supplemental information from Mr. Santucci regarding his initial plans if his receiver agent card is approved. Mr. Steve Gilbert has advised me that Mr. Santucci has completed all application requirements in Acela. Thus, should the board approve this application, a temporary agent card could be issued to him immediately thereafter. You will also be provided with a written order should you approve the receivership agent card. Mr. Santucci is present with his counsel, John Savage. Other interested parties are also present. I would like to hear from them. I'm also available for any other questions, and I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Representation of parties in our proposed receiver.
Good morning, Chair Douglas, members of the board, John Savage, counsel for proposed receiver, Jacques Santucci. Mr. Santucci is also present.
Good morning. My name is Jacques Santucci, president of Opus Consulting.
Good morning.
Good morning again, Chairman Douglas, members of the board, Director Klimas. I'm Maggie McClutchy. I represent Green Ops LLC, the creditor and part owner that Mr. Rath mentioned, and also available by Zoom for any questions is also my co-counsel in the receivership action, Mr. Scott Moskal.
Thank you.
Morning, Chairman, members of the board, Executive Director Klimas. My name is Amanda Connor. I am the current point of contact for all of the licensees, and my firm serves as regulatory counsel for these companies. Thank you.
I will start off kind of a general questions from the board, and then it's open thereafter. The two concerns I had, one for our proposed receiver is his ability to work with whoever is on the grounds here in Nevada based upon being out of state in nature. You did outline some things, but the other is not so much on you, but just in general. It indicates the Source's CEO, CFO, and half of its board managers have abruptly resigned, leaving a critical senior management void, which is and will continue to cause financial and management concerns in terms of you trying to resolve what you're trying to resolve. And I'd like to hear your comment and thoughts on the ability from the distance as well as that other issue.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and that's a very valid question. So as I explained in the memorandum that I sent a couple of weeks ago, our company is actually set up for that kind of work. So our headquarter is located in Maine, but our clients are around the country. We are a team of a dozen people. Unfortunately, spend too much time in planes and hotels, but we have clients, in New England as well as right now Michigan. And other places. We've done work as far as Hawaii. So we are set up for that kind of work. Also, you got to remember that things have changed over the past 20 years. And I see ourselves like a business doctor. And all of us would have never thought that we could have actually telemedicine probably 25 years ago and talk to a doctor through videos. But now that is the case. And I think it's coming just the same for business. I'm intending to spend time here in Nevada and for sure in the next couple of months because there's a lot of things to do and meet with people. It's very important to talk to employees and talk to partners and vendors. But on the other side, technology and other things are helping us to manage the company, remotely.
And it's my understanding that you've continued with some counsel here that was going to deal with matters of compliance. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Dealing with matters of compliance and
Yes,
keeping some of the attorneys involved.
Attorney Connor.
Chairman, to answer your question, yes, Connor and Connor is willing to stay on as compliance counsel throughout the receivership. Thank you.
Other questions or concerns by board members or clarification they need?
Member Durrett, for the record, I think everyone involved now would probably not be able to answer this question, but so I just wanted to make a comment that this is probably a really good case study for us to look at next time we do licensing, because this was considered one of the top licenses. This won 7 licenses. And I don't think that means that doing the criteria of merit didn't work, but I think we need to make sure that when we do criteria of merit licensing, we are having the companies prove their financial wherewithal and following up on what they say they can do, because clearly this company wasn't going to be able to open and 7 licenses throughout the state. So I think we should keep this as a case study for future licensing rounds of what we want to avoid.
Other comments or questions by other board members? Reference this request for receivership application. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. And my question, I agree that there's a lot more that we can do now with technology. However, we're talking about 300 employees and little to no leadership. I'm just curious to find out initially how many days per month are you willing to be present in the state until everything's up and running?
Yeah,
Or
thanks for the
until it's
question.
stabilized?
Yeah, thanks for the question. The answer is simple. As much time as needed. I'm actually here for the rest of the week. I'm planning on coming back, as soon as possible. If I need to be here for, I'm making it up here 6 weeks consecutively because there's some issues, then that's what we will do. I'm not anticipating to have to be present that much, but if it's necessary, I and or my team will be on site. You also have to note that after talking to some of the team on site right now, it seems like there's a really good team there. And the issue is less about the team and more about the organization of the companies and some past recent history, I should say. But short answer is I will be here as long as it's needed.
Thank you.
With that, does any other board member wishes to weigh in?
Member Durrett, I have a question. So I think it'll be helpful to have in state council, local council, you have Connor and Connor's office. Who will you have on the ground that has cannabis experience? Will you have a manager or a compliance person doing the day-to-day operations that has cannabis experience in Nevada?
Member Durrett, this is John Savage. I would be counsel for Mr. Santucci, and be working with Ms. Connor, and also Kevin Blair is general counsel for the firm. And everything we've done some preliminary due diligence. Everything we've heard from the attorneys is that the company is in good shape, especially from a regulatory compliance issue. And initially, I think the plan is to continue. Mr. Santucci's plan would be to continue business as usual, relying on Ms. Connor's regulatory guidance and also Mr. Blair's institutional knowledge. If any additional support is needed in state more frequently, as Mr. Santucci said, he's here. He's ready to get started this afternoon. If the board approves his application, I do believe he's satisfied all of the regulatory and statutory requirements to be approved. And his team is planning to be here through the end of the week. They're going to visit every site personally and conduct their inspections this week. We heard earlier that recently 30 employees were laid off from this company. And so that there are some financial concerns that are going to be looked at. But Mr. Santucci is willing to be here as much as is necessary and willing to work with the board on any potential conditions for his in-state presence, but also, we do have relationships with regulatory consultants here locally, and we certainly would be happy to engage them if it looks like that would be an appropriate measure.
Thank you.
I have
Any other
one
board
more
member?
question.
Yes.
What do you think will be the timeline? What do you see happening over the next few months or year?
Yeah, my experience with receivership is it's never really clear when you start, right? You have to get a status or a state of the company. But my initial preliminary examination tells me that it's probably 6 to 8 months maximum. Some of the cases we worked on have been longer because the company had some cash flow issues and other lawsuits. That doesn't seem to be the case here. It's so I would expect by end of Q1 2024 that we would have a change of control and a resolution for this case.
Maggie McCletchie on behalf of Green Ops LLC. For the record, I just wanted to address a couple of questions. In fact, one of Chair Douglas's earlier questions about how the receiver can proceed in light of some of the management issues that are detailed in the complaint and the order appointing the receiver. And I just wanted to point out that's exactly why we're here. My client is both the creditor and an owner, and currently has the only board seats on the board because the majority owner and other owner just essentially quit without any notice and left us in a very difficult position as both creditor and as owner and as board members. My client has some conflicts and is in a difficult position. My client has been working closely, for example, with Ms. Connor's office to ensure, and my client has been responsible for ensuring ongoing compliance, including making sure that fees to the CCB are paid. So I want to make clear that the issues that you pointed out are exactly why we sought and obtained a receivership. I think that Mr. Santucci is in a unique position, and we spoke to many potential receivers before we proposed to the court that Mr. Santucci be a receiver. As you know, and as we've detailed, the source is a big player in the Nevada cannabis industry. And like other players in the industry, big players are not immune from the challenges that cannabis businesses have had. But in light of the large number of licenses and the CCB's dual requirement that that a proposed receiver both have been appointed as a receiver before and have sufficient experience, we believe Mr. Santucci was the appropriate choice in light of his extensive experience and his ability to work with the players. While there are some serious financial issues at the source, and that's the reason my client filed suit and sought and obtained a court order for a receiver subject to CCB approval. As we've already discussed, it has good regulatory counsel in place. It's up to date on its regulatory requirements, and we're in a unique position where we need a receiver that will work with existing folks that are at the source and are competent, able to work with Mr. Santucci and outside regulatory counsel from Connor & Connor.
Thank you. I note for the record that we have a proposed receiver, even though not in state, has a very experienced background out of state dealing with these kinds of matters. For us, it's a novel situation of our first out-of-state receiver. But as indicated, his willingness to come in state to work with the team, as well as pointed out, the fact that we now have other methodology to have regular meetings with that team through Zoom and other various things. The court will be monitoring. We will be monitoring. We will see where this goes. I hope that we are not only looking out for the overall management and financial top end for those investors, but also the bottom end of those people who are working in the stores every day for the stores that are still open. Having said that, do we have a motion on the floor at this time as the receivership?
Jerry Merritt for the record. I move to approve consent agenda 5A, consideration of approval of court-appointed receivers application for a cannabis establishment agency registration card for a cannabis receiver. Jacques Santucci,
Jacques.
got it? Application for a cannabis establishment agent registration card for a cannabis receiver as court-appointed receiver for Nevada Organic Remedies LLC, D152, RD152, and RD221, RD219, CO94, RC094, PO63, RP063, TO56, RD216, Consumption Lounge application for Acon A-22-007-0, RD218, RD217, and Henderson Organic Remedies LLC, D107, RD107, and Wellness Arches of Nevada LLC, CO62, RCO62, in the 8th Jurisdictional District Court case number A23-870859-C.
Thank you. That was a mouthful. Do we have a second?
This member Young, I'll second that.
All right, we have the easy second with that. Any additional discussion or areas of concern or statement any board member wishes to make?
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Guzman Freilich. Just for staff, if it would be appropriate in quarter one of 2024, considering the breadth of this endeavor, if we could have an update on the status. Thank you.
And Member Freilich, the court order does require monthly reports, and our order will also require monthly reports from CF.
Great, thank you.
With that, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, and to the various parties, thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you.
I also wanted to thank Mr. Rath for working closely with us on the order before we were able to get here. So I appreciate his involvement with the court process as well.
Thank you, counsel.
Oh, Maggie McCletchie, MCLETCHIE. Thank you.
With that, we would take up item number 6, consideration for approval for conditional license for Cannabis Consumption Lounge. La Lounge LLC, ACON-A22-00073 for possible action.
Chair Douglas, Member Merritt, Member Durrett, Member Young, and Member Freilich. For the record, I'm David Staley, Division Chief of Investigations for the CCB. I'm here to present agenda item number 6, which consists of one request for approval of a conditional license for an independent cannabis consumption lounge. This application is the first independent consumption lounge to appear before you for approval of conditional licensure. If this board approves the conditional licensure, the applicant will still need to complete necessary local approvals and a final inspection of CCB's Inspection and Audit Division before it can open for business. Item A is a request for approval from LA Lounge LLC. LA Lounge is owned by Mohammed Nagy, Mohammed Malek, Robert Potter, Preston Razi, and Omar Nagy, and plans to open its independent consumption lounge in Clark County. LA Lounge's plan is to include a restaurant component to its consumption lounge and has submitted all information required to move to a conditional license status. No areas of concern were identified during this investigation. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Mohammed Nagy, Mohammed Malek, Robert Potter, Preston Razi, Omar Nagy, and Amanda Connor are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Douglas, I'll turn this item back to you.
Representation, Ms. Connor, if you introduce or have them introduce themselves, our parties who are here.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board, Executive Director Climas. My name is Amanda Connor of the law firm Connor & Connor on behalf of my client, La Lounge LLC. All of the members are here. I'll let them introduce themselves, but I did want to note that Dr. Nagy is on Zoom, appearing as one of the members as well.
Any particular order or?
It doesn't matter.
Good morning, members of the board, Your Honor. My name is Preston Rizet. I am one of the principals of La Lounge LLC. I am a practicing attorney here in Las Vegas. I moved here in March of 2003, and I call this home. Prior to opening my practice in 2007, I worked for several national and international law firms. I actually worked here very briefly in this building, couple of floors up for the Attorney General's office when Mr. Chanis was Attorney General. Prior to that, I had the privilege of working for two 8th Judicial District Court judges, Judge Valerie Vega and Judge Gloria Sanchez. That, in brief, is a bit about my background. I'm not sure how far back you want to go. Any questions you may have?
Member Durrett, I have questions for Mr. Rizet, if the chair wants to keep him up there while I ask questions. I just wanted to hear a bit about the lounge because it's interesting that this group got together. I clerked for Justice Kadish, and I remember you appearing in front of her when I was the clerk back in 2005, and so I'm familiar with your legal work. So it's interesting to see you guys now here opening a lounge, getting into cannabis for the first time, correct? And so I just want to hear if that's correct, what your experience is and what you're kind of envisioning for your lounge.
Sure. Well, actually, I think Dr. Nagy, I'm not sure if he was able to appear or not, but he'll comment on that a bit, and also his nephew, Mr. Omar Nagy, who's also an attorney, will comment on that. Dr. Nagy was actually one of the first oncologists in town, so he was a proponent of medical marijuana use and treatment of patients. And again, I'll leave those comments for somebody else. As far as my involvement, I think that the legislature and this board is definitely moving in the right direction with decriminalizing it and with legalizing its use and now providing a safe place for people to consume. I think 20 years from now, maybe 30 years from now, we're going to reflect back on this as one of the wisest decisions made. As far as our involvement, actually 2 of the members, or actually 3 of the members that are present here today, have previously held dispensary cultivation. My apologies, cultivation licenses. Mr. Potter actually he's an attorney and also a commercial developer, very well known in this town. He has actually, I believe, built several of the dispensaries that are currently in town and operating. So they're very familiar with the structure, with the construction, with the compliance. And this is not the first time they've been approved. And hopefully the addition of my name to this ticket doesn't hinder our approval today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robert Potter. I'm president of Affordable Concepts General Contractor. I've been a licensed contractor here in the city for 38 years. I have an impeccable record. I have built, I think, plus or minus 3 grow facilities and 3 dispensaries. I currently have 2 board member cards for Tree of Life. I'm not a current practicing attorney, though. I make my living as a general contractor, and I'm looking forward to building this facility with some sizzle.
Good morning, board. My name is Omar Nagy. I am an attorney, but prior to being an attorney, I was a banker for about 18 years. And my background was mostly real estate banking. So I am familiar with the financial aspects of the business. And based on what we have presented, I think that our projections are pretty in line with a model that has not been tested. At this point, we're going in a lounge model, which from a cannabis standpoint is only available in a couple more states. And in those states, the rules and regulations are very different than what we have over here. My background and why I wanted to be a part of this was when it initially started, this is going back in 2012 when we had applied for the cultivation license. And that was based on my uncle's involvement in Nevada Cancer Center. What he saw over the years was patients needing chemotherapy. And when you need chemotherapy, there's an immediate impact on your eating habits. You stop eating, there's not a lot of desire, people start losing weight. So in order for those patients to move forward or to get back healthy, the treatment that was used was being prescribed medical marijuana. And that's how they were able to manage those patients. Since then, we have come a long ways. And at this point, I think even now, marijuana has a stigma attached to it. It's not a very acceptable item. So when why we wanted to do this, there are multiple factors. One is business factor. Second is providing a comfortable and safe place for somebody to come and enjoy the medical marijuana or the marijuana product. We haven't decided on how we are going to get the lounge structured. We know the overall plan, but what we are doing is we're still looking around and seeing what the market requires because the market is changing. It's not a static market at this point. So we have a couple of ideas. We haven't finalized those ideas. And at the end of the day, once we think which is going to be the appropriate model, we're going to apply that model to the lounge. And another thing, I think it was Member Durrett last time you had mentioned that you were with your children at Circus and you smelled some marijuana, right? That was one of the biggest things for us is contain this to certain area. Instead of having people smoking marijuana everywhere, you should have some places where they can contain it and just limit that area. I have seen that because I have a small child as well. Preston has a small child as well. We run into those situations and we would like to have places where people can be, that is specifically designated for marijuana consumption. Right now, the laws are such you cannot consume, but still you see people consuming medical marijuana, but marijuana on the street. And to some it's pleasant, to some it's not pleasant. For being a parent, I would rather have this in a specific area, and that's why we want to move forward with the lounge. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, board. My name is Khalid Malik, and I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm childhood friend of Omar Nagy, and he just offered me to be a part of this group, and I'm with him. So that's what it is. Thanks.
Member Durrett, was that responsive to your request?
Yes, thank you.
I understand reading through the material, the one nagging question, but I gather that's still at play is where your location is going to be in the county. I'm not going to push you because I know at this point, the way negotiations are over properties, you don't want to say anything until the bird is in the hand. Other board members who wish to do you have any questions or as to this? If not, we are in position for a motion for the approval for a conditional license for Cannabis Consumption Lounge as to the Lounge LLC, if that's appropriate, if we can get a motion.
Jerry Merritt for the record. I move to approve consent agenda item 6A. Consideration of approval for a conditional license for a cannabis consumption lounge for LA Lounge LLC, ACON A220073.
With that, do we have a second?
Member Young, I'll second that.
Thank you. Do we have any additional discussion or comment for the record? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? The matter carries. Good luck, and we will look forward to hearing more information about your proposed lounge.
Thank you. And we'd like to thank Maggie Adams, who worked diligently on the suitability investigation. Thank you.
We are now at item number 7, request for transfer of interest. Medical Cannabis Healing LLC, TOI 22015, C178, RC178, P112, RP112 for possible action.
Chair Douglas, Member Merritt, Member Durrett, Member Young, and Member Freilich. For the record, I am David Staley, Chief of Investigations for the CCB. I'm here to present agenda item number 7, which consists of 2 transfer of interest or TOI applications. Item A is a TOI application, Medical Cannabis Healing LLC, which holds cultivation and production licenses in North Las Vegas. TOI number 22015 was filed requesting approval for a transfer of 4.03% ownership by Ali Ganji back to the company after his death. Medical Cannabis Healing has also requested waiver at CCR 5.110 pursuant to 5.125. If approved, the requirements for prior approval of transfers of less than 5% of Medical Cannabis Healing's ownership will be waived. The company has adequately addressed the items required in NCCR 5.125 to allow the board to approve such waivers. Staff suggests that if approved, the board limit Medical Cannabis Healing's 5.125 waiver to expire on its next TOI agenda date. An area of interest was identified during this investigation because Ganji's shares were transferred back to the company before board approval. Staff did not identify the transfer as an area of concern due to the circumstances surrounding the death of a member causing the transfer and because Medical Cannabis Healing has not reissued membership. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Michael Schneider, Dallas Horton, Tyler Morgan, and Steve Pachetti are available to explain how Medical Cannabis Healing has handled the transfer and address any other questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Douglas, I'll turn this item back to you.
Representation, and Mr. Horton, are you here as counsel or just as a?
I'm here as the CEO of the company, Justice Douglas. Good to see you. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the board, and I mean really thank you for letting me heal and moving the hearing. I had major catastrophic surgery. I couldn't have stood, literally, at the time. So very generous of you, very kind of you. And I can't tell you how important it was for me at that time not to think about anything but just to heal. It was my bowels, and stress is just not good for your bowels. It's okay now, they took them all out, so you can stress me out all you want.
And if we have the representation of the gentleman standing next to you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. My name is Tyler Morgan. I'm the president of Medical Cannabis Healing.
Thank you.
As the board is aware, we had, during the construction of our company, a sweat equity owner of our company pass away. As the board is also aware, sweat equity is equity earned by labor. Okay, we were in construction. He passed. When he passed, obviously he could not earn his sweat equity because he couldn't work for the company when it opened. Under the terms of our operating agreement, you can't do that. You can't get something for nothing. What was most frightening for us, and a few lawyers owned the company, was he had property and his family was in California, and they were going to try to probate this. We needed to let them know, hey, this is sweat equity. He's not here to earn it. He's got nothing. We were so afraid that the state of California was going to probate the shares. And I'm really grateful to see Justice Douglas here. But what happens if California does that is, under the full faith and credit clause of the United States Constitution, Nevada must honor that. So now we have a member, people, heirs, owning shares in our company that the Nevada Cannabis Board has never spoken to, never given us permission for, nothing. We were really afraid. Our mistake, we were during construction. Our mistake was immediately letting them know no value. We should have called the Cannabis Compliance Board. We speak to you guys daily now. Your records will reflect that. We were in construction. We thought we were protecting and respecting the state. And we find ourselves here today, and we didn't respect you because we didn't call you and we didn't get you involved. That will never happen again. We're on the phone with you every day. We humbly beg your forgiveness. We did not do anything with Mr. G shares at all. They're sitting in treasury, waiting for you guys to tell us, okay? Because we did do the application. Once you do that, we'll do an application to redistribute his shares. But we're sorry. We shouldn't have done it. We didn't know any better. We thought we were respecting the state, when in fact it appears as if we owe you an apology. We just did not want another state issuing an order saying this is the owner, and then the U.S. Constitution coming in to say, hey, Nevada, they beat you to the judgment. This is the law of the land now. And that was, our mistake. We should have made a call to the board before we sent them. So we apologize, but we did not distribute those shares. They're sitting in the treasury of our company. We are begging you to allow us to now give those back to our company so we can make another application to our shareholders. I thank you all for your time. I want to end the same way I began. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate it more than you guys will ever know.
Noted for the record, we had no area of concern. Staff noted the anomaly and felt it didn't rise to the occasion of going forward. But having said that, any questions by board members they wish to ask before we ask for a vote?
Member Durrett, for the record. Well, I think that, thank you to Chief Staley for flagging the concern and then, handling it as a notice to the board, but not as a disciplinary matter. I think that's a great approach. Is the Michael Snyder involved? Is that Senator Snyder?
It is. He's my boss. He's the manager. I'm the CEO. So I jump when he says jump.
Is he in there? Is he there today? I think he needs to get on the record and.
He is not. He is in Coronado with his grandchildren, and he asked us if we needed him to come, and we actually told him to be with your grandkids. We don't think we need you here, and I apologize. But I can probably get him on the phone if you really want to talk to him.
No, I don't think
Okay.
I need to disclose that I did intern for him in 2005. So just tell him.
I remember you when you were with Judge Kadish.
Small world. But okay,
Yes.
next time Senator Snyder has to come and get on the record.
Yes, ma'am. I promise.
I think it would be better for us to have a site visit to Coronado.
I agree.
With that, do we have a vote for approval of the TOI request?
Jerry Merritt, for the record. I move to approve agenda item number 7A, request for transfer of interest from Medical Cannabis Healing LLC, TOI number 22015, C178, RC178, P112, RP112.
Member Merritt, David Staley for the record. Could you please also read into the record a condition on the 5125 waiver to expire on Medical Cannabis Healing's next TOI date?
Unfortunately, I did not hear that. So could you repeat it for me, please?
Chief Staley, do you want to go ahead and repeat that, and then Member Merritt can incorporate it into a motion if she wishes.
Sorry, David Staley for the record. Staff would request that the approval of 5125 waiver for Medical Cannabis Healing be conditioned to expire on the next transfer of interest agenda date for Medical Cannabis Healing.
Expire on the next
time the matter comes back before the board. So it's so that it would be only applicable the next time it comes back before the board.
Okay, that it will only expire.
I think you can just incorporate what he's without repeating it. Yeah. If you'll accept the statement, Mr. Staley.
Okay. So, so then help me with it, please.
I accept the addition by Chief Staley.
Okay, so I would accept the addition to the motion.
Thank you. We now have a motion. It's duly noted in the record. Do we have a second?
Member Young, I'll second that.
That seconded. Do we have any additional comment for the record?
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Staley, Mr. Rath for their professionalism. And I want to thank the Cannabis Compliance Board, and specifically Ms. Merritt, for moving. Thank you so much, guys.
With that, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Matter carries. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you.
That move takes us to item number B, THC Production LLC, TOI 22-00007, P017, RP017 for possible action.
Chair Douglas, members of the board, my name is David Staley, Chief of Investigations for the record. Item B is a TOI application by THC Production LLC, which holds cultivation and production licenses in North Las Vegas. TOI number 22-00007 was filed requesting approval for the buyout of the 50% they did not already own by Zachary Silva and Andre Gutierrez through Imperial Enterprises LLC from existing members. Let me try that again. They're going to purchase it through Imperial Enterprises LLC from existing member Experience Premium Cannabis LLC. No areas of concern were identified during this investigation. I'm available for any questions, and my understanding is that Zachary Silva and Andre Gutierrez are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Douglas, I'll turn this item back to you.
Thank you. Representations, please.
Yes, my name is Zachary Silva. I am one of the owners of Imperial Enterprises and the managing member of THC Productions.
Fortunately, staff is noting no areas of concern, and they've done a nice rundown of the operation. But having said that, do any board members have any questions they wish to raise for our staff or to our representative licensee? Hearing none, and if we can have a motion for approval of the request for transfers of interest associated with that. And my review of the record indicates we have no special conditions to add. So if we can have a motion for approval.
Okay, it's Jerry Merritt for the record. I move to approve agenda item number 7B, THC Productions LLC, TOI number 22-00007, P017, RP017.
We now have a motion for approval of this transfer of interest. Do we have a second?
It's Member Young, I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additional comments or concerns for the record? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Matter carries. Thank you. Good luck,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Chair.
That will move us over to item number 8. Consideration of proposed adoption, amendments, and/or repeal of the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Regulation, NCCR 15.055, ventilation of the cannabis consumption for possible actions. And I know we've had some additional language, and if our Assistant Director would talk about this, please.
Good morning, Chair and board members. I'm Michael Miles, Deputy Director of the Cannabis Compliance Board. This agenda item is to approve potential changes to NCCR 15.055, which are the ventilation regs for consumption lounge licenses. Last board meeting, an update to 15.055 was approved, and that change will be updated on the website this week. The board requested we take additional comment on this regulation. We accepted additional comment and received 2 comments. We created this proposed change based on those comments. This change creates a waiver process to sections 1 through 4 that would require board approval. The waiver process must be approved by an engineer and will detail how the new plan still protects customers and agents working in the lounge. And Back to you, Chair.
If you would read the last pertinent point that you just outlined real quickly.
The waiver process will be approved by an engineer and will detail how the new plan will protect customers and agents working in the lounge.
Thank you. With that, any comment as to the now proposed amended 15.055 for the record? I know we received some public comments.
Good morning, Scott Rutledge with Argentum Partners here on behalf of Reset Consulting. I just wanted to say thank you to the staff and the board for considering our comments. I know the last hearing on this was a marathon one, so I will be very brief and just let you know that we do appreciate the opportunity for a waiver. We do think that each of these businesses, again, as was stated, will have different designs, different focuses, and so just being able to work with you on those plans on a case-by-case basis, we think will allow for these to not only get open sooner, but also save a lot of money for folks who can't afford to invest in some of these very, very expensive HVAC systems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Amanda Connor of the law firm of Connor and Connor. To echo Scott Rutledge's comments, I would like to thank the board and staff for considering the comments on this proposed regulation section. I think at the last hearing last month, it was very clear that it was hard to determine an appropriate standard given all the factors and variables that will go into the different lounges. And thus, I think a waiver process is the appropriate way, especially relying on professionals whose job it is to certify such plans. It does leave it to the board and requires that the things that were of top concern, consumer and the agent's safety, be considered and detailed in those plans. Thus, I would ask that the board approve this proposed amendment. Thank you.
Anyone else in Las Vegas wish to comment about that change? Do we have anyone in Carson City or our northern affiliate that wish to make any statement as to this regulation?
Thank you, Chair Douglas, members, Brett Scolari, Strategies 360. I'll be brief, echo the comments of Mr. Rutledge and Ms. Connor. I appreciate staff and the board allowing us some more time to find a landing spot. I think the waiver is a great landing spot for the industry. We already have a couple of clients been working on this for quite a while, at least Cureleaf and Thrive. I know they're consulting with engineers that have experience in facilities that require heavy ventilation, and facilities that have smoking issues. So this will give them an avenue to present something to the board and get it vetted and approved by the board and move forward with a public safety component. So we appreciate your support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else in the north, comments by board members, references, or questions?
Member Durrett, for the record, I have a comment. I support this addition, and I appreciate that the director and staff were willing to pivot so quickly when we found out there was issues with the HVAC language, and then even just since the last meeting, when there was it was first uncovered that the strict numerical application might not work for different models. So I appreciate this additional language. I would like to have a discussion before any of these come back about what we will be looking at when we do go over a requested waiver. A very high level discussion on, well, what are our goals here? And then perhaps a more specific discussion on when we're reading these reports, what will we be looking for? So I would feel very unprepared if we were to hear one of these waivers anytime, or if we were to hear one of these waivers without having that discussion first. I would really appreciate industry involvement on educating us or discussing and recommending what are our goals when we get to the table on that.
Thank you. Any other board member? For the record, Chair Douglas, I would echo part of that concern in terms of the board should consider, but it needs to be not only the industry, but the public that we are concerned about also in this matter, that has a right to weigh in. And I would ask Director Klimas put something together so that we eventually can bring it back for the board to consider before we have an application, since we are a public body and we can't work outside of our quorum factors. So but I would ask our director to put something together as to what we might need to look at so we can discuss it on the record. Anyone else wish to weigh in before we ask for the vote as to what is before us this day? And having said that, appreciating the concern as to what we are being tasked to do, and hopefully the ills that it at least satisfies at this point. If we can have a motion for approval of the amendment, adoption amendment, and repeal of the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Regulation.
Jerry Merritt, for the record, I move to approve agenda item number 8A, a consideration of proposed adoption, amendment, and/or repeal of the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Regulation, NCCR 15.055, ventilation of the cannabis consumption lounge.
We have a motion for approval of the proposal. Do we have a second?
This member Young, I will second that.
Thank you, Dr. Young. With that, any additional discussion or comment for the record? Hearing none, all in favor of this matter, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Matter carries. Thank you very much. Looking forward to word back from our director as to other items related to the board getting involved with requests. Consideration of future. Okay.
Number 9.
Yeah, I know. Number 9 is consideration for future meeting dates for the second phase of adjudication hearing in CCB versus Canex Nevada LLC, now known as Test LLC case number 2020-27. This matter was put on. We had a prior hearing of the board to review the report of the hearing officer and determine whether or not violations had occurred based upon the record that had been presented and arguments had been made. We refrained at that point from saying what fines could possibly be, or more importantly, what kind of violations they were in effect based upon the nature of our code that breaks down what levels and what effect. We need a date for the second phase of adjudication hearing in CCB. As to that, at this juncture, we are not final in this. I, for one, would say the door is still open if the parties wish to use it to sit down and see if they can come to an accord. possible settlement, because it's always better if the parties resolve this than third party, the board, take a final action. But if they don't take action, then we have to take action. Having said that, I would put this matter back on, ask the board to agree with me to put it back on in 30 days for status. We would set a date for our next phase, or allow the parties to see if they can come to some kind of agreement. If they can't, so be it. We will do what we need to do. That would be my request. Having said that, for the record, at this point, I know it's first blush. If the other board members wish to weigh in as to that proposal.
Chairman, this is Member Guzman Freilich, and I'm in agreement to try to see if the parties can get together and come to maybe some stipulation or have mediation or whatever is available, whatever tools are available for them.
And this is Member Young. I'm also in agreement that, I think 30 days is appropriate, that hopefully the parties can come together. Hopefully we can have a status update at that time.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to weigh in? If no one else wishes to weigh in, if we can have a motion, I'll make the motion. A motion. It's listed for discussion only, so no motion needs to be made. What I would say is that we will move this matter to our next scheduled meeting of August 22nd for any update as to possible settlement negotiations, or for a date certain, the board to hear the next phase as to what is the appropriate level of violation and fine based upon the record, and give it a date for argument. That would be my position. It's discussion only, so we'll move the item so it's on our August 22nd meeting date. Item number 10, briefing from the chair and the executive director. For my part as chair, there are a couple of just odd items. The cannabis industry across the country is very much in the same throes that we are in the state of Nevada. California was mentioned earlier, but California and Colorado, those states that are attached to us, so to speak, are going through some of the same concerns and gyrations that we are in terms of the marketplace, and being a profitable market in a regulated market, or over-regulated market, or under-regulated market. So that's kind of tough. We have finished the legislative session. I have my personal feelings about goods and bads. I will say, from a board standpoint, we as a compliance board must operate within the dictates and passage of regulations from the legislature, and we will do that. We think I speak for myself, I think some are great. Others, the jury is still out to see what that's going to do to us. But hopefully it will help our market with the concerns of the unregulated industry as well as the regulated industry, and more importantly, our ability to make necessary changes because of the ever-changing industry in a rapid nature with the new regulation. I was taken aback a little bit during the public comment earlier as to concerns about the regulatory standpoint of being open and honest. We are concerned with the people who work in that industry, but based upon the law as it's been written, we are not the overseers of contract litigation and such. That's for the court system or the other alternatives of mediation and arbitration. We have grounds that we can get involved in, and others, they did not give us jurisdiction to do that, so we abide by that. Lastly, just on a personal note, I've been suffering with the sniffles this morning, as you probably have noticed. I sat in an office that was down to 72, gave me a little sinus problem. With that, to the executive director.
Thank you, Chair. I just have two things for my portion here. One is a status update on a petition that this board has heard a number of times from White Pine County concerning medical licensing rounds in jurisdictions that didn't participate. This past Friday, we issued a notice of adoption for next month's board meeting. Staff is currently contemplating language that could potentially allow for local jurisdiction input, specifically on community impact of cannabis facilities. And this would extend to any and all jurisdictions that would qualify to participate in this medical-only licensing round for medical cultivation, medical production licenses. So we look forward to bringing some of that language up in the interim before the next month's meeting and have something at the very least to discuss at next month's meeting. And then finally, a quick update from the legislative session. Chair, you asked me to go through a couple of the high points. We had a small handful of bills that were signed that do impact the CCB from the legislative session this year. Most of the action items will center around promulgating new regulations or amendments to our current regulations. Additionally, and generally speaking, our regulations will switch from the NCCRs back to the NAC at some point, hopefully or likely over the next year. There are a few effective dates stemming from the legislation that don't take place until the first of the year. This includes an increase to possession and purchase limits. We've communicated to the industry as well as the public through our channels, like our social media channels, to communicate when these new limits take effect. And this agency and our staff will obviously continue to be as proactive as we can to communicate this and other changes that may be upcoming. Details on particular bills: Senate Bill 195. This bill includes changes to the disciplinary process, including how the board weighs mitigating factors and sets limits on max penalties. These changes will necessitate updates to our regulations, which we will put drafts together and bring back for workshop. SB 195 also eliminated billing for time and effort for routine audits and inspections. However, it does not impact time and effort for investigations. No new bills for routine audits and inspections will be sent out. Senate Bill 277, some of the major changes, and you heard some in our public comment today, center around combining our medical and adult use licenses into one single cannabis establishment license. This was something that we supported last session and should reduce administrative burdens on both the industry and the regulator's side. The bill also requires the board to develop, through regulation, a petition process for a person who's been convicted of an excluded felony to apply for an exemption. We had some comments and some requests on timeline. So the effective date of this bill and this particular provision is January 1st. However, we will get started on the regulations beforehand, and any regulatory changes that will be necessary to facilitate this petition process will need to come in front of a public workshop. So we shall have opportunity for individuals to provide feedback on that. Changes, as I mentioned, to possession and purchase limits takes effect January 1st. And then finally, the bill requires the Cannabis Advisory Commission to study impacts of potential descheduling or rescheduling of cannabis at the federal level and submit to the legislature a report of any recommendations by March 1st, 2024. The Cannabis Advisory Commission meets again on August 15th, and this matter will be assigned to one of our subcommittees to begin discussing what that report looks like. Lastly, Senate Bill 328. This bill begins to contemplate what will be needed to begin addressing the illicit market. It authorizes seizure by the Board of Illicit Market Cannabis, as well as envisions the development of a civil penalty structure through regulation targeted at illicit market operators. It makes some public policy changes to 678A005 It also makes governance changes to the board, changes some start and end dates of some board positions, and staggers the term of CCB board members. And finally, it places the CCB under the Administrative Procedures Act, NRS 233B, for all activities of the board, including regulations and disciplinary matters. There are also a couple of other pieces of legislation which help refine the fair market value process, codify the requirement to check the age of a cannabis consumer, and finally, a joint resolution calling on Congress to deschedule cannabis at the federal level. So we've got a list of to-dos, as I mentioned, especially around new regulations. We're currently developing many of those drafts in order of priority and mandated deadlines, and we'll begin to share these proposed changes as they are completed. The goal here, as it always is to continue to get robust stakeholder input throughout the process. And we'll also likely see some changes around the way we handle certain functions. Senior Deputy Attorney General Chris Rath detailed or alluded to some of this, changes around some of the complaints and settlements or how the board deals with these. And then finally, we have some listservs to industry that have gone out, and we will likely have more listservs and policy statements going out to the industry around some of these changes as we move through the end of the year. So with that, that's the report. Happy to answer any questions on specific bills, and I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
My comment before I ask other board members as to looking at individuals who are eligible to receive various cards and their individual appeal. If you'll note, the gentleman's concerned earlier as to those who are still under supervision, where before you've been sentenced, but you still have a period of time you're under supervision, to see how that plays into our ability to grant cards and not grant cards when you look at that. With that, any other board member have anything else for the director in agreement with Member Durrett about the other issue, bringing that back in terms of obligations on the air handling and such?
No, not that issue in particular, but I do think more detailed discussion of how the legislation will be implemented would be helpful. Not today, but in the future, maybe before the next meeting. Thank you.
Could you clarify that a little bit more?
Member Durrett, for the record, I that was a helpful high-level report. I'm already familiar. I think most of us followed the legislature. We know what passed, but so I'd like to have a discussion about timelines for implementation and understandings of what the intent was behind some of the legislation and how we expect it to be applied, maybe before the next board meeting.
Thank you for that clarification. And the word intent is always interesting in terms of what was said versus what was written. So we'll see what we get in the gray areas, but understand that task. So thank you for clarifying. Anyone else? If not, then we move our agenda along. The next meeting date is scheduled for August 22nd, 2023. I don't know if we have anything else of items for future agendas that we haven't stated this morning. If we have something else the board member wishes to so state that we ought to look at, please so state. But you can always call the director directly and he will take note. If not, we come to our second phase of public comment. And I guess much like the one earlier, we have the public who is present in north-south as well as anyone on the phone. I think we have that what that requirement would encompass that. With that, good morning.
Good morning, board members. Justice Douglas.
Good morning, Chair Douglas. Good morning. My name is Desiree Harmon.
And I am Carly Krieger, and we make up one of the prospective consumption lounge licenses. And I know everybody is ready to get out of here, so we will keep this pretty brief. But we heard you guys at the last meeting asking licensees to come forward with some issues. You know, I understand some may be legislative issues, unfortunately. But as we are going through this license process, trying to work out a profitable, successful business, as I'm a licensed attorney, we're both business owners. We not only want to see ourselves survive, we also want to see these novice business owners, mostly the social equity owners, survive as well. But we are running into some issues. First, we need a DRAM-like law for us consumption lounges. We are going to have insane premiums on our insurances because we don't. We face liability because of that. And we definitely, need something to help us out. Costs are a huge issue. I feel like we're beating a dead horse with you guys, so I won't. But, we have a lot of high costs. Another being buying through retail rather directly through wholesale, especially when we are up against 20 attached licenses that can buy directly through their store. We've only met with 2 fully integrated licensees that are willing to not rip us off. 2 is not enough to supply all 20 of us. And lastly, locations. Finding locations is a huge issue. Big one being federally backed financing. That's a majority of properties owned here are out of question because of that. Never mind landlords that just fall into the stigma of cannabis still. I know the setbacks, especially that gaming one, is very political, but we're struggling to find locations, especially 7 years in, where hundreds of licenses already exist and are operating and are in these very specific locations that we can only be. There are only so many number of buildings that even qualify. So I don't necessarily have any solutions besides maybe helping us out on that setback, but we're struggling with locations, and any help we could get would be fantastic.
Thank you. Some of those concerns we're aware of. Some unfortunately fell on deaf ears. But having said that, I would ask you to stay after and talk to one of our staff members, see if they can direct you to who might be the appropriate parties to answer some of your questions. We can't do that directly here, but the staff may be able to do so after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Other public comment in Las Vegas? Public comment in Northern Nevada? I see. And do we have anyone on the phone?
For those on Zoom wishing to provide public comment, please click the raise hand icon. There's no public comment online.
Thank you. With that, we would be in adjournment. Thank you very much.